Hello dear students, welcome to our YouTube channel Smart PTE Tricks. Today I am here in front of you with the good news that now we are starting our PTE online classes. If you are interested, then contact us on the numbers given below. And thanks for your love and support. Keep supporting.
This simulation shows what you might see if you are orbiting a black hole. The light and position of background stars around the hole are distorted by its gravity and they seem to spin around. On the right, the constellation Orion appears to approach the event horizon, the boundary from which nothing can escape. Orion's stars look like they become separated and get spun around. Once the hole has passed by, Orion reappears on the left and looks normal again. Users can experiment with different scenarios. This is what you might see if you were traveling towards a black hole with rocket engines slowing your descent. Another simulation mimics free fall into a hole. In the middle, the light of the entire universe appears to be concentrated in a bright ring. This illustration often used is the one that the monkeys and the typewriters. Okay, we have a monkey sitting at a typewriter, and the claim here is basically if you leave chance in time long enough you will get life. Don't worry about it. Yes, it's as strange. Yes, it's wonderful, but leave enough matter 600 million years on Earth and you will have life. So, the monkey sitting at the typewriter, the chances are eventually he produces the complete works of Shakespeare, so what's the problem? So, there's no problem. There's no issue, right? You just leave it long enough and you'll find. In 1 key striker seconds, the monkey might well eventually get to you the complete works of Shakespeare, but he doesn't manage to do it in 600 million years. So, what I decided to do is to run the numbers. Instead of typing the complete work of Shakespeare, I just run the numbers for how long would it take a monkey typing 1 key striker a second. To type, to be or not to be, that is the question. Right, on average how long is it gonna take my monkey friend 1 keystroke a second? I don't know how you think it would be. Maybe you could have a guess. Would it be less or more than 600 million years, which is the period life on Earth isn't supposed to have emerged within? And when I run the numbers, to be or not to be is the question, takes 12.6 trillion years to type just that phrase in a DNA string has got as much as information the Encyclopedia Britannica. Are we saying that something of that complexity emerges by chance undirected within 600 million years? Again, it's about whether you can achieve a win-win solution, whether you can achieve economic growth which brings wealth in order to cut poverty without damaging the biodiversity. And the argument is that if you want to protect biodiversity, you have to focus on that as a goal. But if you do that, you run the risk of hurting the poor, and you also run the risk of inconveniencing and reducing the economic growth. We use the developed and industrialized countries to see this argument. This axis argued about with, let us say, a government wishing to start drilling for oil in place X which is full of wildlife, and Wildlife Conservation Society is urging them not to on the grounds that it's a wilderness refuge. We use to that debate. What I'm saying is that in the developing world there's a third axis, and it's a complex one. For better or worse, we live in a world profoundly affected by Sigmund Freud. If I had to ask you to name a famous psychologist, the answer of most of you would be Freud. He was the most famous psychologist ever, and he had a profound influence on the 20th and 21st century. Some biographical information. He was born in the 1850s. He spent most of his life in Vienna, Austria, but he died in London and he escaped to London soon after retreating there at the beginning of World War II as the Nazis began to occupy where he lived. He was one of the most famous scholars ever, but he was not known for any single discovery. Instead, he was known for the development of an encompassing theory of mind, one that he developed over the span of many decades.
Indeed, the library. We've all been to a historic library. We've all enjoyed the smell of a historic library. But what is it? And what does it mean? When at UCL Center for Sustainable Heritage, we've recently been asked to assess the environment at another historical library at St. Paul's Cathedral, the Wren Library, an incredible place. And it has such an intensive smell of old books, and we were also asked for the first time, really I was actually taken aback by the brief, we were asked, what you do, please preserve the smell. It is so important to our audience. It is so important how people perceive the library. So, that was quite an important message in our research. And indeed the smell is an important way of how we communicate with the environment. This piece of research was done by an advertising company because advertisers are so interested in how we interact with each other and the environment. And we see that the majority of people use sight obviously to interact with the environment, but on the second place, we see the smell is also very, very important. The Skoog is a new university-accessible musical instrument. It is designed to use by children or adults with special needs, or in fact be used by anyone. It's soft, it's easy to play, it's robust, and it can be customized to suit anyone's abilities. The Skoog helps students with special needs by allowing them to get involved in making music themselves. It's an instrument that they can play it and they can take ownership of and start creating their own sounds and music. Traditional instruments are the shape and size and made of the materials they are because of the sound that they need to make. If you want to make a sound like a plucked string, you need a string and it needs to be under tension, whereas with a Skoog, because it's a mixture of software and a sensor, then thus the computer can handle making the sound. And so we can design an object that's designed to be touched and designed to be played with. In developing the screen and working with kids in the schools and in the classrooms, it's really helped us make the Skoog something that's usable by the children themselves. They've informed us massively on how it needs. In today's lecture I'm going to talk about changes in air pollution since the middle of the last century and what has created these changes. So, by the 1950s, air pollution was very visible with frequent thick black fogs known as smogs in many large cities around the world. The main source of this pollution was from factories and it caused severe health problems. For example, a particularly severe smog in London in 1952 caused over 4,000 deaths. Obviously, something had to be done, and in 1956 a Clean Air Act was introduced in Britain. This addressed the pollution from factories and the smog soon disappeared. However, as you know, these days air pollution is still a big issue. The main difference between now and the 1950s is that you can't see it, it's invisible. Also, the main source of pollution now is from cars and lorries, and although these don't produce visible signs, this air pollution is still a significant risk to health. And one of the key factors in the rise of this type of pollution is that we have all become much more vehicle dependent. There are far more cars and lorries, trains and planes than in the 1950s, and this is now the main source of air pollution around the world.